Assalamu alaikum, students. I hope my previous lectures were clear. So now we are continuing with the female reproductive system. Today we are going to start with the fallopian tubes, and then I'm going to do ovarian tumors. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can write in this inbox, or you can directly WhatsApp me. Okay, on my number. So all of you know fallopian tubes are extensions from the uterus, and the fimbrial ends come up to the ovaries. The fallopian tube. The most common disorders which affect the fallopian tube are infections, ectopic tubal pregnancy, and endometriosis. Endometriosis, I have told you, is the presence of endometrial glands and stroma with hemorrhage and hemocysteine-laden macrophages. These can be present in the fallopian tube or infections. Infections, Dr. Kamal have dealt with you yesterday as well. I'm just going to touch it. And ectopic tubal pregnancy means when the ovum gets fertilized and is going to be embedded within the fallopian tube. Ectopic means it's not the common site for the pregnancy to be there, but it is a site in which fallopian tube gets the embedding of the fertilized ovum. Okay, inflammation, suppurative salpingitis. Suppurative salpingitis is the inflammation or infection of the fallopian tube, which is called by pyogenic infections. These are gonococcal organisms seen in more than 60% of cases. Chlamydia are also responsible for endochronic salpingitis as well, or suppurative salpingitis as well. And then there is other part of pelvic inflammatory diseases, which you have done yesterday. So inflammation of the fallopian tube is seen because of gonococcal infection, because of chlamydial infection, or any other infection which is affecting the pelvic inflammatory disease.
नहीं आप खत्म कर रही हैं तो ठीक है स्टार्ट कैसे हो गया मैं
इसको रोकूं
हाँ जी प्लीज मैम
Okay. Sorry, there is some confusion. I'll continue with the lecture.
मैम वो नेक्स्ट वीक से है न्यू टाइम टेबल नेक्स्ट वीक से
एक्सक्यूज मी मैं जरा इधर ही हो जाती हूँ जो पुराना
आप कहते हैं
11 बजे हमारा है
ये पुराना ये जो है ना effect from 29th June ये ऊपर लिखा with effect from 29th June है
तो अगर आप कहती हैं तो मैं कंटिन्यू कर लेती हूँ फिर आप
मैम प्लीज मुझे
आपको कोई जाना है
हाँ ना मुझे डिपार्टमेंट में काम है
नहीं देखिए मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग आपको भी हुई है क्योंकि मुझे जो टाइम टेबल आया था
मैम आप उस पे देख लेंगे इफेक्ट फ्रॉम 29 जून पर लिखा हो
जी मैम वो ये न्यू वाला वो मंडे से अप्लाई है
विद इफेक्ट फ्रॉम 29 जून
जो लास्ट वीक एक वीक का टाइम टेबल आया था उसमें यही लिखा हुआ था
नहीं ऐसा नहीं था मैम
जो ऊपर नोटिस है ना
29 लिखी हुई है
ये तो आप वाले हैं ना ये तो ये है ना एक इससे पहले भी आया था
नो मैम
डेफिनेटली इससे पहले आया था विद इफेक्ट फ्रॉम 15 जून ये देखिए ना
इसमें फोर्थ ईयर
ये फोर्थ ईयर दौड़ी जी वेंसडे 11 बजे ये देख रहे हैं डॉक्टर साहब
उसके पास पैसा लेकिन जो हमारे पास है
उसमें मैम ये कब का है 15 जून
मैं इसके अकॉर्डिंगली
एक मिनट
ये देखें पैथोलॉजी 11 बजे
आई डोंट नो हमारे पास ये टाइम टेबल तो आया ही नहीं
ये
मैं इसके हिसाब से मैं आई हूँ डॉक्टर साहब
और मैम ये मेडिसिन वाला इस पे
लेकिन मेरे पास जो आया वो तो ये है ना और उसमें क्या 15 जून लिखा आप पे क्या डेट लिखी है मैं तो पिक्चर खेल लेती हूँ उसी वक्त आठ जून वो 8 जून है ये फिर 15 जून का है
चलिए ठीक है मैम आप कर लेना
थैंक यू सो
एक ही रोस्टर करना चाहिए
रोज की कंफ्यूजन है कल परसों 90 वाला आगे बैठे थे उन्होंने आजकल
Sorry, students, there was some interruption because of the timings, but we were doing inflammation of the fallopian tube. Next is the tuberculous salpingitis. Tuberculous salpingitis is seen in our part of the world because TB is very common, and it is in the USA it is seen in 1 to 2% of cases, while in Pakistan tuberculous salpingitis is quite common condition and it can lead to infertility. Then next is the ectopic tubal pregnancy. When the ovum gets implanted in the fallopian tube after fertilization, it leads to ectopic tubal pregnancy. As the ovum enlarges, it can lead to tubal rupture, which is an emergency and patient can go into shock. So ectopic tubal pregnancy is the presence of or embedding of the ovum, fertilized ovum within the wall of the tube. This is not the normal side. Normally it has to be embedded within the uterine cavity. So as the ovum enlarges, there is not enough space for the ovum to be accommodated. It leads to rupture of the fallopian tube and it can lead to a shock, and it is an emergency condition. The patient has to be operated. Then there are certain cysts which can be seen in the fallopian tube. These are endometriotic cysts, paratubal cysts. These are only 0.1 to 2 centimeter translucent cysts filled with clear fluid. Larger variants of the cyst are present at the fimbriated end are called the cysts of Morgagni or hydatid of Morgagni. So this is a picture of hydatid of Morgagni, which is a cyst present at the fallopian tube end. So at the cysts which are present at the fallopian tube ends are or fimbrial ends are called hydatids of Morgagni. Next is the tumors of the fallopian tube. The tumors of the fallopian tube are benign tumors and malignant tumors. Benign tumors are called adenomatoid tumors, mesotheliomas, which can occur on the subserosal side of the tube or in the mesosalpinx. So adenocarcinoma of the tube is very rare. It can present as prominent tubal mass that may be detected by pelvic examination, or they can be detected by abnormal bleeding or abnormal cells in the pap smear. Pap smear, Dr. Kamal must have told you, is a pepiniculum smear which is done routinely on married females to see whether there is carcinoma of the cervix or any dysplastic cells present within the cervical epithelium. So these the pap smears can also be beneficial in the diagnosis of carcinoma of the endometrium as well as carcinoma of the fallopian tube. They are shed and they can be taken up and can be seen in the smears. So usually these adenocarcinoma are at stage 1 at the time of diagnosis, and the 5-year survival rate is very poor. 40% patients die within 5 years of diagnosis of these tumors. So fallopian tube we have finished. It's only there are going to be suppurative salpingitis, tuberculous salpingitis, ectopic tubal pregnancy, cyst which can be endometriotic or paratubal cyst or hydatid cyst or Morgagni, or tumors which are benign tumor, adenomatoid tumor, or malignant adenocarcinoma. Ovaries is very important from your examination point of view as well, from your SCQs or your MCQs and short OSPE exam as well. So the most common disorders of the ovaries are simple cyst, follicular cyst, luteal cyst, endometriotic cyst, and then comes the tumors of the ovary. Infections or inflammation in the ovary or pingophoritis is also a very common condition, but it was only seen in the cases of pelvic inflammatory disease, which Dr. Kamal have discussed with you yesterday. So the mostly cysts which are present in the ovaries are simple cyst, follicular cyst, luteal cyst, and endometriotic cyst. Endometriotic cyst we also did in the where I did the endometriosis of the ovary, and then I'm going to do the tumors of the ovary in detail with you. So if you see this chart, it shows the benign cyst of the ovary, follicular cyst. These derive from the follicles that fail to ovulate. Luteal cyst, corpus luteum that develop into a cystic cavity can change into a cyst as well. Paraovarian cyst, vestigial remnants of the mesonephric or paramesonephric ducts is present. Inclusion cyst are segments of the ovarian surface epithelium which dip down into the ovarian stroma and produce inclusion cyst. Cyst of Reti ovary. These Reti cells are derived from the mesonephrons and are embryonic in origin. The cells are involved in phagocytosis and degeneration of whose cysts. They do not produce any hormone. So cyst of Reti ovaries can be seen as well. These are all benign cysts. Okay. So if you see this diagram, this is the ovary. You can see paraovarian cyst or teratoma. Teratoma is a benign tumor of the ovary which arises from the germ cell, and I'm going to do it in detail when I'm going to do tumors. This is the follicular cyst. Corpus luteal cyst, endometrioma is the presence of endometrial tissue within the ovaries or this is the hemorrhagic cyst. So this is the endometriotic cyst. Endometriotic cyst I have dealt with you when I was doing ovary, and I have already told you this is your OSPE slide as well. You can see a large ovarian cyst filled with hemorrhage. So you can write 2 points of identification that there is a cyst lined by smooth surface inside and lumen contains hemorrhage. So you can see the most probable diagnosis is endometriotic cyst of the ovary. Folliculars and luteal cysts. Follicular cysts are very common in ovaries. These are usually multiple. They range in size from the 0.5 to 2 centimeter or even larger. Larger cysts, they cause pelvic pain. The cysts are lined by granulosa cells. Sometimes they are surrounded by luteinized theca cells, which produce increased estrogen. So you know the follicles, when they mature, the ovum is going to be discharged out, and these cells are lined by first granulosa cells, and these granulosa cells become luteinized, and they are called luteinized or theca lutein cells. These cells produce estrogen hormones. Sometimes the follicular cysts develop, and these are lined by either these theca cells, or they can be lined by granulosa cells. Okay, and these are also benign cysts. Next is the luteal cyst. Corpus luteal cysts are lined by large luteinized granulosa cells, and these can rupture, producing pain, and inflammatory reaction can be seen around these rupture cysts. So when corpus luteum becomes enlarged, it changes into a cyst, and these cysts are lined by large luteal cells, and sometimes these cysts rupture, which can produce pelvic pain, which can mimic as acute appendicitis sometimes as well, but mostly it is because of the luteal cyst rupture. And these can rupture, producing pain, and inflammatory reactions can be seen around these cysts as well. So this is the luteal cyst. You can see these are large luteal cells, and the cyst contains a hemorrhage of blood clot. These are granulosa cells which have become luteinized, and these are theca lutein cells. Then in the ovaries, another condition which is very important is polycystic ovaries and stromal hypertrichosis. Polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS, is a complex endocrine disorder which is characterized by hyperandrogenism, menstrual abnormalities, polycystic ovaries, and decreased fertility. Previously, the syndrome was called Steen-Leventhal syndrome as well, and this syndrome affects at least 6 to 10% of the female during their reproductive years of life. This polycystic ovarian syndrome is also associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes mellitus, atherosclerosis, and indicative of underlying metabolic disorders. So polycystic ovarian syndrome is a very common condition which is seen in 6 to 10% of females in the reproductive years of life, that is in young females, and it is associated by endocrine disturbances which are characterized by hyperandrogenism, means increase in the male hormone production. And this will bring changes in the menstruation, or menstrual abnormalities can be seen. Ovaries have contained small cysts all over its parenchyma. And because of the polycystic ovaries, decreased fertility is also seen in these married females. This syndrome, polycystic ovarian syndrome, was previously known as Steen-Leventhal syndrome. I'm giving you an older name because sometimes examiners can ask you what is the Steen-Leventhal syndrome, and it is the polycystic ovarian syndrome. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is also associated with obesity, diabetes mellitus, atherosclerosis, and indicative of underlying metabolic disorders. Etiology of the polycystic ovarian disease is not very clear. It may be because of the dysregulation of enzymes which are involved in androgenic biosynthesis and excessive androgen production. So we are not very sure what is the underlying pathogenesis of polycystic ovarian syndrome and hypertrichosis. Hypertrichosis, I am going to explain it later. It might be because of the dysregulation of enzymes which are involved in androgenic biosynthesis and excessive androgen production. Women, these have insulin resistance as well, and altered adipose tissue metabolism, which contribute to the development of type 2 diabetes and obesity. So underlying mechanism is not known, but it is because of the dysregulation of enzymes, or it can be these women develop insulin resistance, and altered adipose tissue metabolism can be seen, which is leading to diabetes mellitus type 2 diabetes mellitus, and obesity as well. Morphological abnormality which is present in the ovary is there are many follicular cysts that enlarge the ovary. Serum estrogen level is high. Women with polycystic ovarian disease are at increased risk of development of endometrial hyperplasia and carcinoma. Why they are increased at risk? Because of endometrial hyperplasia and carcinoma, because both these hyperplasia and carcinoma are dependent upon the increased level of estrogen synthesis. As I've already done the endometrial carcinoma and endometrial hyperplasia, and I've explained to you that increased estrogen level is playing an important role in the pathogenesis of both endometrial hyperplasia and carcinoma. So in polycystic ovarian syndrome, because of increased production of estrogen, these women are also at increased risk of endometrial hyperplasia and carcinoma. Polycystic ovarian stromal hyperplasia. So you can see this is a polycystic ovary. You can see these blue cysts present. And this is the gross appearance. And on the cut section of the gross appearance, you can see these multiple cysts. These are present within the ovary. And microscopically, you can see these are the cysts which are present all over the ovarian stroma. Okay. This is polycystic ovarian hypertrichosis. Hypertrichosis means the stroma has become very thick, like white and fibrous in appearance. Next is the stromal hypertrichosis, also called cortical stromal hyperplasia. It is a disorder of ovarian stroma seen in postmenopausal females, but it may overlap with the polycystic ovarian syndrome in younger females as well. Grossly, it is a bilateral and uniform enlargement of the ovary which occurs, and it is white to tan in color. Microscopically, it shows hypercellular stroma with luteinization of stromal cells which are visible as discrete nests of vacuolated cytoplasm. It means the stroma, which is mostly most stroma of the ovary, becomes increased in cellularity. There is hypercellularity or increased cellular content of the stroma, and some of these cells become luteinized, and luteinized cells are always large, big, and they contain visible vacuoles because they produce hormone. So they become large in size, these luteinized cells, and they contain small vacuoles. So this is the stromal hypertrichosis of the ovary. I hope it is clear. So what we did today about the benign condition of the ovary, I showed you this chart which shows all this benign cysts in the ovary, then endometriotic cysts, which we have already done. Then I did this follicular and luteal cyst. Then I did polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is very important because it can lead to hirsutism in females, in young females, and also infertility. And now we are going to do ovarian neoplasms. Ovarian neoplasms are very important from your examination point of view, from your Viva point, from your SCQs, MCQs, and your OSPE exam. I will keep on telling you which will be the OSPE slides out of these slides, which I'm going to show you for ovarian neoplasms. There are many types of ovarian tumors. 80% of the ovarian tumors are benign, and they occur in women between the ages of 20 to 45 years of female. Borderline tumors occur at a slightly older age, and malignant tumors mostly occur in older women between 45 to 65 years of age. So 80% of the ovarian tumors are benign, but then we have borderline tumors as well, and then we have malignant tumors in the ovaries as well. Ovarian cancers, they account for 3% of all cancers of female genital tract. Most ovarian cancers have spread beyond the ovary at the time of diagnosis, and they have a poor prognosis. Why they are so spread at the time of diagnosis? Because we do not have any system which can show us that because the ovaries are a hidden structure, we cannot do any examination of the ovary all the time. So better is to get an ultrasound done every yearly to show if there is an increase in the size of the ovary or any pathology present in the ovary. Okay, so most of these ovarian tumors are diagnosed at a later stage, and they have a poor prognosis because they have already spread out of the ovaries. So if you see this, the normal structure of the ovary, the classification of ovarian tumor is according to the structures which are present in the ovary. So ovarian tumors are deriving from the surface epithelial cells are known as surface epithelial tumors. Tumors which arise from the germ cells, they are known as germ cell tumors. And tumors which arise from the stroma or sex cord, they are known as sex cord stromal tumors. Okay. And then there are non-ovarian tumors which are coming from the other primary and getting a metastasis in the ovary, and they are called metastatic tumors of the ovary. So Classification of the ovarian tumor, as I've already told you, is according to the cells of origin from where they are originating. If they are originating from the surface epithelium, they are known as surface epithelial tumors. If they are arising from the germ cells, they are known as germ cell tumor. If they are arising from the sex cord or stroma, they are called as sex rod stromal tumor. And metastatic tumors are coming from the other primary tumors into the ovary. And one important is Krukenberg tumor, which I'm going to explain you later, which is a metastatic tumor to the ovary. So this table shows World Health Organization classification of ovarian tumor. It is an abridged form for undergraduate students. For postgraduate, it is a more elaborate than this. So you can see this table. Serous tumor, mucinous tumor, endometrioid tumor, clear cell tumor, transitional cell tumor, and epithelial stromal cell tumor comes under the surface epithelial stromal tumors. Then we have sex cord stromal tumors, granulosa tumors, Sertoli cell tumors, sex cord tumors with annular tubules, gynandroblastoma, steroid lipid cell tumors, and then we have germ cell tumor. Germ cell tumor are teratomas, immature, mature, solid, cystic are known as dermoid cyst as well. Monodermal teratomas, which are known as stroma ovariae or carcinoid tumors, dysgerminoma, yolk sac tumors, and mixed germ cell tumors. Then malignant tumors, which are not otherwise specified, are metastatic tumors coming from the colon, from the stomach, or from the breast. So this is the World Health Organization classification of ovarian tumors. Again, I'm going to elaborate this. Ovarian tumors are primary neoplasms and metastatic neoplasms. In primary neoplasms, as I've told you, there are surface epithelial tumors, germ cell tumors, sex cord stromal tumors. And then there are metastatic tumors which are coming from the other sites in the body. So according to WHO classification, the serous tumors are again divided into benign, borderline, and malignant. Benign are called cystatinomas, cystadenofibromas, borderline are serous borderline tumors, and malignant are low and high grade serous adenocarcinoma. So surface epithelial tumors are further divided into serous tumors. Serous tumors are further divided into benign, borderline, and malignant. Similarly, the other surface epithelial tumor type is mucinous tumor. I'm going to explain one by one. I'm just giving a classification right now. So mucinous tumor can be like endocervical-like or intestinal-like. They produce abundant amount of mucin. They are again benign, borderline, and malignant. Benign are called cystatinomas, borderline are borderline tumors, and malignant are malignant mucinous cyst adenocarcinoma. Then we have endometrioid tumors in the ovaries, like endometrioid carcinoma in the endometrium. This is again benign, borderline, and malignant. Then we have clear cell tumors in the ovary, which are again benign, borderline, and malignant. Then we have transitional cell tumors in the ovary, which are also known as Brenner tumor. The older name for transitional cell tumor is the Brenner tumor. They are benign Brenner tumor, borderline Brenner tumor, and malignant Brenner tumor, or malignant Brenner tumor can be present in the ovary as well. Then we have epithelial stromal tumors, in which we are seeing both epithelial and stromal components. They are adenosarcoma and mixed Müllerian tumor, malignant mixed Müllerian tumor, MMMT, which we have already done in the uterus as well. I hope you remember that. So this finishes the classification of surface epithelial tumor. Next is the sex cord stromal tumor, which is arising from the sex cord which are present within the ovarian stroma. These tumors are granulosa cell tumors, fibromas. Number 2 are fibromas. Number 3 fibrothecomas, or they can be pure thecomas as well. Either they are pure fibromas, pure thecomas, or combined fibrothecomas can be seen as well. Then Sertoli Leydig cell tumor or steroid lipid cell tumor. These are all from the sex cord stromal cells. Okay. So from sex cord stromal cell tumors, we have granulosa cell tumor, fibroma, fibrothecomas, thecomas, Sertoli Leydig, and steroid. Next are the germ cell tumors of the ovary. Germ cells tumors which produce the ovum. These tumors are teratomas. Teratomas are benign tumors which are those teratomas are benign which are benign teratomas are cystic teratomas. Then we have immature teratomas. Then we have mature solid cystic teratomas which are dermoid cysts. So teratomas are mature teratomas. Mature teratomas are usually benign. Then we have immature teratomas which are malignant. And mature teratomas can be solid cystic or dermoid cyst. Then we have monodermal teratomas. Monodermal teratomas means only Cells from burnt germ layer is seen. These are stroma ovarii and carcinoid syndrome. Then we have dysgerminoma and yolk sac tumors and mixed germ cell tumor. These are all germ cell tumors of the ovary. So in the teratoma, the mature teratoma, we can see all three germ layers are present. I'm going to show you later, okay? So this is the Goldhead classification of the tumors of the ovary. Then metastatic tumors, which are from the non-ovarian primary, can metastasis can from the adenocarcinoma of the colon, gastric adenocarcinoma, adenocarcinoma of the gallbladder, adenocarcinoma of the pancreas, or breast invasive ductal carcinoma. They get all their secondaries to the ovaries. Okay. So now we are going to discuss surface epithelial tumors of the ovary, and then we'll discuss mucinous epithelial tumors. Surface epithelial tumors of the ovary are very important from your OSPE exam, from your MCQs and SCQs as well. The serous tumors, which are cystic neoplasms, and they account for 40% of all ovarian carcinomas. 70% of them are benign and 30% are malignant. They can be bilateral. So 40% of all ovarian tumors are serous tumors of the ovary or surface epithelial serous cyst adenocarcinoma or adenomas. 70% of these are benign and 30% are malignant, and some of them can be bilateral as well, like they can be seen in both the ovaries at the same time. Pathogenesis. Pathogenesis for the surface epithelium is not very clear in the case of benign and borderline tumors. In the malignant tumors, the most important cause can be nulliparity. Family history and heritable mutations, they play a major role in the malignant surface epithelial serous tumors of the ovary. Nulliparity means when the female has not produced any child, or there is a family history which can be present in the mother, and heritable mutations play a role in the pathogenesis of malignant surface epithelial serous tumors of the ovary. Serous adenocarcinoma are divided into low-grade and high-grade tumors depending upon the degree of differentiation, nuclear atypia, and patient survival. So low-grade tumor have a better survival than high-grade tumors, and it depends upon the degree of differentiation. The more differentiated the tumor cells are, this is low-grade. The high-grade tumors are de-differentiated, and there is a lot of nuclear polymorphism in them as well. And patient survival is also low in case of high-grade tumor, and patient survival is high in case of low-grade tumor. So they are divided into high-grade and low-grade. Then BRCA1, BRCA2 mutations are seen in women with fallopian intraepithelial neoplasia, which can also be a precursor for ovarian carcinoma. BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes are present, and these are also responsible for the familial type of carcinomas in the breast as well, which we are going to do when we are going to do the breast neoplasms with you. Okay, so pathogenesis for malignant surface epithelial tumor can be that it is most commonly seen in those females who have not produced any children, or there is a family history of heritable mutation, or the genes play a role. BRCA1, BRCA2 mutations are seen in the surface epithelial malignant tumors of the ovary, and they are also seen in the fallopian intraepithelial neoplasia, which can also be a precursor for the ovarian carcinoma. Okay. On the gross appearance, the serous tumor, now comes the morphology. After the pathogenesis comes the morphology. We do both gross and microscopy. In the gross appearance, the serous tumor, they present as a multicystic lesion with papillae or a mass which project from the ovarian surface. So benign tumors, benign serous cyst adenomas, we must call them as benign serous cyst adenomas. They have smooth glistening wall and small papillae projections can be present, or there can be no papillae. Okay. Next is the borderline tumors. Borderline tumors contain more papillae projections and solid areas, but still they are borderline. Borderline means that we cannot categorize them as malignant, or we cannot categorize as purely benign. They are in between benign and malignant. So, but they have a better prognosis than malignant. They do not metastasize. That's why they are called borderline tumors. Then comes the malignant tumors. Malignant tumors have larger solid areas, more papillae projection, irregularity, fixation, and nodularity of the capsule. Serous borderline and malignant tumors invade the surface of the ovary. So this photomicrograph is, this is the gross appearance of the ovarian serous cyst adenoma. You can see a smooth glistening surface on which you can see blood vessel. This is the ovary present with the remaining ovaries present. Okay, this is a serous cyst adenoma of the ovary, which is a benign surface epithelial serous tumor. Okay, serous cyst adenoma ovary, gross appearance. This is papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma gross appearance. You can see the cyst and you can see all these papillary irregular fronds which are present within the cut surface of the ovarian cyst. This you can see a cystic lesion, but you can see very many solid areas with papillary projection in between. This is a papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma. Why we call it serous? Because there is serous or thin clear fluid present within the cyst of the ovary. This is also serous cyst adenocarcinoma. You can see all papillae present which are coming out of the cyst. Okay, these are the gross appearance of serous cyst adenoma and serous cyst adenocarcinoma. I hope it is clear. And both of these are your auspice slide. So remember that both these serous cyst adenoma and serous cyst adenocarcinoma are your auspice slides. Okay. Next is the microscopic appearance. In the benign tumors, the cysts are lined by columnar epithelium with abundant cilia and few papillae. So when you see the microscopic appearance, you can see a cyst lined by very nice thin layer of columnar epithelial cells which have abundant cilia and very few papillae are present. In the borderline tumors, you show increased complexity of the stromal papillae, stratification of epithelium, mild nuclear atypia, but stromal invasion is not present. So I'll show you the slide before I go further. This is the slide for the borderline papillary serous cyst tumor microscopic appearance. You can see a thin line columnar epithelial cells, but they are forming papillae which are projecting into the lumen of the cyst. But this ovarian stroma is not invaded. There is no invasion into the ovarian stroma. So I'll go back. In the benign tumors, you can only see a thin cyst lined by columnar epithelial cells, but in the borderline tumors, you can see increased stromal complexity with papillae formation and stratification of epithelium. Milder nuclear atypia is seen, but there is no stromal invasion. In the borderline, the epithelial proliferation often grows in a delicate papillary patterns, which are referred to as micropapillary carcinomas. And these micropapillary carcinomas can be thought of to be precursors for the low-grade serous carcinomas. Okay, so micropapillae are going to be formed like this. Small papillae are formed of micropapillae. These are called micropapillae, and these are papillae lined by columnar epithelium, but they are not invading in the stroma. That's why they are called benign borderline tumors. Next are the malignant ovarian tumor, malignant serous tumor. They are known as papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma. Malignant tumors of the serous origin are known as papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma. I'm repeating it again so you remember that. Malignant tumors are low grade and high grade. High grade are more complex as compared to low grade. High grade are distinguished by low grade by having more complex growth patterns and wider spread infiltration or frank effacement of underlying stroma. In the low grade tumor, they are infiltrating into the underlying ovarian stroma, but the nuclear morphology is not that bad as compared to high grade nuclear morphology. In the high grade, there will be more mitotic figures, many irregular mitotic figures, and there is increase in the nuclear cytoplasmic ratio, which is present both in the case of low grade and high grade, but more in the case of high grade tumors. Okay, and they are frankly invading into the underlying stroma. So I'm going to show you the picture now. This is the serous cyst adenoma, in which you can see the lining epithelium is very thin, only one layer, and this is columnar lining epithelium. This is serous cyst adenoma borderline or borderline tumor of the serous origin. You can see papillae formation, but nuclear atypia is not marked. This is the invasive type of papillary serous cyst adenoma. You can see multi-layering of lining epithelium, many papillae projection present within the lumen, and you can see invasion into the underlying stroma. This is also papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma when invasion into the underlying stroma is present in both these cases. This is borderline. Okay, I hope this is clear. In the case of malignant tumor, as I've showed you, there will be more effacement of the underlying stroma. The individual tumor cells show marked atypia, means there will be more pleomorphism. The cells do not resemble each other. Pleomorphism is also present. Mitotic figures are present and multinucleation is seen. Multinucleation means that one cell contains many nuclei. Serous tubal intraepithelial carcinoma have cells identical to high-grade carcinoma, but they lack invasion. High-grade tumors become undifferentiated serous features are no longer recognized. Pneumoma bodies are present. So in well-differentiated tumors, you can see papillae formation lined by high-grade cellular atypia and nuclear atypia. But in high-grade tumors, they can become undifferentiated. You can only see sheets of cells. Very few papillae formation can be seen, and pneumoma bodies are present in between. Pneumoma bodies are calcified secretions which are present in between the cells. These tumors, they spread to peritoneal surfaces and omentum. And this, I've told you already, is the photomicrograph of papillary serous cyst borderline tumor, borderline papillary serous cyst tumor, okay? And as I've told you, this is the benign serous cyst adenoma, this is borderline serous cyst tumor, and this is the papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma, both these slides. This is again papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma ovary, microscopic appearance. You can see many papillae. They are lined by multinuclear columnar epithelial cells. The cells show increased in nuclear atypia. Cell cytoplasm is less as compared to nuclear cytoplasmic ratio is altered, and these are also invading the underlying ovarian stroma. Okay, this is a low-grade papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma. Next comes the mucinous tumor. 5 minute रह गया. हाँ? 5 minute रह गया. Okay. Okay, 3 minutes are left. I'm going to unmute you, and if you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can write in your inbox, or you can directly send me into your WhatsApp. So I will answer them in your WhatsApp group, or I can also put them in on LMS.
हाँ जी खदीजा, आप बात करना चाह रही हैं मैम से? अनम्यूट है, आप कर सकते हैं.
Please ask your questions. सबको unmute कर दो ना.
इनके पास ऑप्शन है.
हाँ?
इनके पास ऑप्शन है अनम्यूट की, खुद करेंगे अपने आप को.
अच्छा.
ये मैंने कर दिया तो.
अच्छा. If you want to ask any questions, I'm available for 2-3 minutes. कौन करना चाह रहा है?
आपको अनम्यूट कर दिया, आप क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं मैम से. आपके पास ऑप्शन है अनम्यूट की.
Okay, so I'll see you on Monday then. Okay, thank you.